we've heard today that truth is a form of safety. When narratives are corrected, communities gain power, clarity, and dignity. Our next panel brings us into the heart of the matter, the work of healing and relationship building. Healing is not theoretical. It is lived, embodied, and often generational. I've also learned, thanks to Dr. Christopher from the text, A Course in Miracles, healing is reparations. So this panel features leaders who have transformed trauma into connection, storytelling, resilience, and repair. Please welcome the Collins family, honoring the legacy of their son, Second Lieutenant Richard W. Collins III, through work that heals and educates. They are alchemists of the highest order. Abdul Hai Thomas, working with youth in the child welfare and juvenile justice systems, using storytelling to build connection and prevent violence. And Anika Jackson, a nationally recognized leader in nonviolence, community healing, and Selma's Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation initiatives. I want to thank them all for being here, and we'll just go right into our conversation. I want to start by speaking directly with the Collins family, Dawn and Rick. What has sustained your healing work? And what does the public still must understand about the generational impact of hate violence?
Oh, first of all, thank you, Dr. Hunter. And I appreciate you inviting us, and Dr. Christopher for having us on this panel, a very important panel. And I guess I would go on to say my wife and I are both very grateful to you for even considering us to be a part of such a distinguished panel. In answer to your question, I guess, as I understand it, the thing that I would say sustains us is basically the space that we find ourselves in is something we have a passion for, solely based on the love of our son. That's what drives us as far as motivating us to pursue this, I guess you could say, sort of social engagement, and in a hope of bettering the broader community beyond just our own circle and our own lives. And, as so many others that we've come to know in our journey since our son's tragic death, is none of us chose this path. None of us would have volunteered this work if it had been offered to us as an option. So that's one of the biggest things that I would say. But nonetheless, here we are. We find ourselves in this space, and out of love and honor for our son, we feel that we owe it to the life that he lived to be able to go out and speak truth to issues that have impact on so many communities, particularly for so many people who don't have an outlet or don't have an opportunity to be able to give voice to how these traumatic events impact them. So speaking to the healing part, I believe, and my wife and I, kind of share this feeling, is we will never heal. There is no true healing from this type of tragic loss, because our son was a part of us. Mm-hmm. So in effect, a part of us was lost, mm-hmm. is lost. So that's how I hope I answered your question. But
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Miss Dawn, you have anything? Yeah, you have anything you want to add or enhance?
I cannot do anything but echo what my husband has said, but something I want to resonate with the audience. My son was not a mistake. He had people who loved him, who cherished him, and he was ready to make the ultimate sacrifice for this nation, and that was with his life. And for someone to look at him and see him as the other, it's despicable. So my husband and I knew we could not be quiet. We're not made that way. We poured everything we had into him, and I am sick of hearing who the other is. And as my husband often says, there's only one race, and that's the human race. So I don't get to say I don't like you because. No, unacceptable. So we understand that we are more alike than different, and we will never, as my husband just said, be truly healed. And I am going to continue to speak about my son when, as I tell people, when you want to hear it and when you don't want to hear it. That's on you. But I'm going to do my job
And you
as the
are.
mother. Thank you.
Absolutely. And you are. And if I may, something to pull from both of you. So thank you both for not only keeping his memory and name alive, but also to use the expanded heart that a child brings to parents and staying in that and deploying that for the betterment of humankind. Because given a tragedy that you experienced, you had a lot of choices of where you could pour your emotional, psychological, and righteous energy. And you're choosing to better us in the process. God bless you. We are so thankful for you in general and specifically for being here. I want to come to Sister Jackson. I want to give it the right attempt the next time. Ayinka Jackson, if you're nasty. We want to thank her for being here today in her purple, looking like the royalty that she is. Can you share for the good people some of the significant breakthroughs in community healing and nonviolence in Selma, which is in some ways a metaphor for the heart of America, especially when we think about where we were, where we are, and where we're trying to go?
Yeah, Selma is definitely, as Lyndon B. Johnson said when signing the Voting Rights Act, about saving the soul of the nation. And so when our mission is to build the beloved community in Selma, it's not just for Selma. It is so that others won't just come to Selma for our history, but our healing. How did you go from the 8th most dangerous place per capita in the country to this? How did you go from these failing schools and these broken relationships to this? And that's really important to us because we founded the Selma Center to address violence in its many forms, whether it's racial, physical, or economic violence. Often people don't think about poverty as a form of violence, but we think that anything that dehumanizes others is violent. And so we work to build the beloved community. We talk about it as being Selma 2.0 because there's unfinished business of the civil rights movement. In many ways, one of those ways have been mentioned, and that's with a violence intervention program, CVI program. Unfortunately, that program was defunded by the Department of Justice, over $2 million. Right now, again, we were the 8th most dangerous place per capita in the country. So places where there is no violence, limited violence, crime is decreasing, they send people in. But place where crime is an issue, they're taking funds out. So that's very, very important to note. But we haven't let it stop us. We are determined to keep moving forward and equipping people to fight back nonviolently using racial equity, nonviolence, and restorative justice training, community-centered economic revitalization, and beloved community block clubs, which I'll say something about a little bit later. But I did want to say that it's important for us to understand that violence is not only cyclical, it's systemic. And often we think of systemic as institutions, but in our racial equity training, Beyond Divide and Conquer, Unite and Build, we talk about systemic as being personal, cultural, and institutional. That's really, really important because if we just address institutions, we will never get rid of systemic racism, right? Institutions are made up of people with cultural beliefs and value, and we have to do healing, systemic healing with all of that. Systemic healing is necessary with all of that. So we often think of other people of being the problem. They have the cultural beliefs and values that are the problem, and we have it right. And I just want to say that that the lack of humility and self-righteousness will stop transformation from happening. We all have to recognize that at points we're all part of the problem and we all get to be part of the solution. As Audre Lorde said, we can't tear down the master's house with the master's tool. But I also add, nor can we build the house the new house with the master's tool. And so not only do we have to uproot white supremacy culture out of all of us, including those people who have been historically oppressed, because I believe the more privilege you have, the more you've adapted those characteristics. But we also have to replace them with beloved community characteristics. And so I just want to quickly say what we talk about as being a beloved community and give you an example of what that sort of looks like and feels like. We say that beloved community is effort to achieve a reconciled world where you raise the level of relationships to a height where justice prevails and people can reach their full human potential. And in the nonprofit social justice world, we often want to do justice out there, but we forget that we have to do it here. You can't build a beloved community without being it. It's not just a destination, it's a journey. And so we have to prioritize relationships, healing of ourselves, healing between in our community with others that are not necessarily in our community. And so, for example, I'll say our racial equity training, which is not light, it's just rooted in love. A white evangelical Trump supporter has recruited more people to our racial equity training than anybody else. And I was having lunch with her recently at her home, and I shared about our defunding by a president that she supported, right? And she asked questions. She wanted to know, what was it about? And if I said, because this is partially your fault, because you voted for him, and so therefore I'm not talking to you, I would lose the opportunity for justice to prevail. And so you have to raise relationships to a height and lean in with love so that we can make sure that people reach their full human potential. The last thing I just want to quickly say is that I want to encourage people to do our own work, because when we don't do our own work, we make others work more. We've all internalized the violence of this nation, and we see that often in our communities. And so we have to do the work of uprooting that internalization. We have to decolonize our hearts. We must identify assumptions. This is a TRHT main shared love agreement is what we call them. We must identify assumptions, suspend judgment, and turn to wonder. So instead of canceling people out when we don't understand, we have to turn to wonder. We have to be intentional and not make people disposable. We must call people in to deepen relationships, not just calling people out. Because when we call them out, they go to the other people and they begin to organize versus calling them in and they get to help us organize. Dr. King talked about unarmed truth. We have to have unarmed truth to heal and destroy harmful conditions, not people. And the last thing I just want to say is that we must fight on all three levels: personal, cultural, and institution, for transformation to occur, addressing hearts and minds and material conditions. And for us in Selma, and I would encourage others for the same, that includes holistic approaches to ensure individual and collective safety. We are using beloved community block clubs to do that, which is a values-driven, neighborhood-based initiative that serves as a model of parallel self-governance and participatory democracy, and that's rooted in love and interdependence, that can help people communicate, reimagine, create, transform, protect, that connects direct service and advocacy and power building together when those are usually pitted against each other. And particularly around safety, and I'll end with this, is that it can help deter, because presence deters violence. So if we come out of our homes and building community in relationships, we're doing that healing work. It helps to deter violence and conflicts. Training people in restorative justice who are part of beloved community block clubs, so they know how to deal with conflicts that are happening. They can organize against state-sanctioned violence and do advocacy all in one when we do holistic solutions.
Thank you so very much. That was, we asked or expected for a few plates of food, and you gave us a whole buffet. Thank you so much. So much to really be nourished by in what you said. Something I want to come to, just a high school teacher turned professor in me, that I want to really underscore that you mentioned, which is from the Ascended Master, Audre Lorde: the master's tools will not dismantle the master's house, or will never dismantle the master's house. And you made a good point around it, and I just want to add to that and say, part of the reason why, or the truth of what she's saying, also is inside the idea because the master did not build the house. Indentured servants built the house on dispossessed native and indigenous land. Enslaved people cleared the forest. Enslaved people built the house. Enslaved people built the Capitol building. Enslaved people built the White House. Enslaved people built Washington, D.C. Enslaved people built Philadelphia. Enslaved people built what we call the 13 colonies. So we have the tools already. And the tools are really inside the thing that we have preserved all of this time, and which the Collins family started us up with, which is our actual humanity, which is shared. We have that already. That is the tool that has designed the world. And if we can get back to that, I think we can get there. And how we're getting there is through healing. How we get through healing is through storytelling, which brings me to Brother Thomas. How does storytelling create connection and reduce violence among youth navigating child welfare, juvenile justice systems, and all of these other kinds of structures and schisms that make it really difficult to be a young person in these United States?
Well, I appreciate the question. And the first thing that came to mind for me was understanding that as I'm doing this work, this restorative practitioner work or restorative practice work, I'm doing it with the young people in partnership and in collaboration with them. So not only am I learning about their stories, but I'm also learning about my own stories, because there are things that I'm experiencing in circle and conversations that I'm having in circle and insight I'm developing in circle that I've never had an opportunity to think about or even put together or have an opportunity to coalesce. So this is the important thing when we're doing this work, is to understand that I am a practitioner. These young people that I'm working with are also restorative practice practitioners. And we are doing this together and we are learning together at the same time. And once that vulnerability was acknowledged, that learning happened so much faster, right? And any of us who have been in a circle, we always say, you know, the wisdom is in the circle, right? And the wisdom will naturally emerge if you just give it that space and that place. So that's been the opportunity that I've really had in doing this work with children and young people throughout the city here in Jacksonville. And so we've seen, to answer your question, we've seen a lot of transformation taking place. And one of the ideas, the first thing that I talk about is, you know, growing up as a young person, there was, you know, negative connotations about police officers. And so one of my responsibilities in my scope of work was to facilitate circles between Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, JSO, and community members and youth. And I came in with my preconceived notions, my understanding of heuristics, and I came into these circles incredibly biased as a facilitator. And over time, having that relationship, being able to be in relationship with these officers, my whole perspective has completely changed. You know, it's been a complete 180. Now, that doesn't negate that I understand that systemic racism still exists, but I have seen these individuals who have a stigma and, you know, who are experiencing bias and judgment come into these very hot, contentious contexts and break down all the barriers by being human, you know, to go what to Don and Richard were speaking of earlier. So I've seen it firsthand between the youth and between the officers, and I've experienced it myself as a practitioner. So that's just one example of the many that we've seen and experienced in my work.
Thank you so much. And pulling out first, thank you for what you're doing and for receiving and acting on your calling. Working with young people is a calling. I mean, all things are, but that's a very specific phone number and phone that gets answered when we're talking about working with young people. Thank you for answering the phone consistently. You also mentioned the point about circle, and I know one of the other things that's very important for Dr. Christopher is healing circles. And thinking about those is not just a practice, but also a policy. So I also appreciate Ms. Jackson bringing that up as well about how method is policy. It is not just something we're doing to feel good, but it can inaugurate a new way of us thinking about things that then help us create policies that deal with the trauma and the harm. The other thing, which is a proverb that came to me many years ago now, that I often say when I'm with my family or in a conversation, a heated debate with my partner, is I believe why they created wedding bands. I don't personally wear one, but they exist. And they are bands that are circles is because a circle has no sides, right? The band is not a square. It is not a triangle. So there are no sides in it. And so I think it's important when we hear the word circle to acknowledge the sacred geometry of a circle and why it's so important to the healing work, because it has no sides. No one's trauma is more important than the other person's. No one's story is more important than the other person's. And in fact, if you put that into a circle, it's just going to rotate back to you. Like it's just going to circle around that orbit and come right back to you and remind you that that circle is being comprised of other experiences that have equal standing. And so I want to come to the Collins family and to hear you all sort of reflect out. I heard this idea that we will never be healed, right? And so that means for me that somewhere in that you have a working conception of what healing is or what it would look like. And so if you all could talk a little bit about that for those, especially in the room, who are wondering if I've been through such an unforgivable, unspeakable tragedy, how am I standing upright? That in and of itself is a form of healing you have found. So I also say that to say you are possessing a healing that you may not be aware of because there's a bigger healing that you see having distance from, but that would be of healing nature to those in the room. If all of that healing repetition makes sense in the question. I want to come to our beloved Collins family.
And thank you for that question. So for us, healing is bringing unlike communities together. And why do I say that? My son was murdered on the University of Maryland college campus. That is the flagship university in the state of Maryland, for those that don't know. He attended Bowie State University, the oldest HBCU in the state of Maryland, which is less than 14 miles away from the University of Maryland. And what my husband and I found, these students on both of these campuses knew nothing about each other. Well, let me take that back. The students at the University of Maryland knew far less about Bowie State. Case in point, after my son's murder, we brought students from the University of Maryland to Bowie State. And I had a young lady exclaim to me, "Mrs. Collins, this is a very nice place." So why am I telling you that? Oftentimes we know more about them than they know about us. So opening that dialogue, having that time to come together, we will find that, yes, we are more alike than not. And that's what my husband and I do, bringing these campuses together. One of the things that we have been able to do, and that picture that you see behind him, are the presidents of those two universities. Bringing a HBCU and a PWI together in what we call the Social Justice Alliance. This is an organization that is the first of its kind in the nation, because we had the professors research it. There's nothing like it. So I guess you would say, going back to what you're saying, healing, I would put ING on that for us. And that is the process that we go through, bringing these communities together. Same that we do with the cadets. And then I'll ask people to just look at our website instead of me just going on and on about what we do. But that's what that ING, and I will defer to my better half on that. And I love that ring analogy.
Thank you. It's straight from the spirit. It just came to me one day. I only get to speak it in words, but it definitely came from the source,
I would just add to what my wife said, and I'm going to share something that I don't often share, particularly in this type of setting. But what happened to our son, that is the becoming a victim of what we are convinced was racially motivated violence was not the first occurrence in our family because, as I'm told, my father was a victim of racially motivated violence 4 months before I was born. My mother was pregnant with me, and I was told that they had been married about 3 or 4 months when suddenly my mother, at the time 22 years old and pregnant with me, suddenly became a widow as a result of murder by a white male in my hometown in 1954. Thing about healing has a whole different level of meaning for me to come back 6 decades later and see my son subjected to the same victimization based on some ideology of certain humans being superior to others. So when I share my thoughts on what healing looks like, these are deep rooted wounds inside both my physical and psychological consciousness. I don't know how to place that into the realm of this discussion, but it is so deeply personal for me in my own experience in growing up that I'm not sure I'm able to quantify what healing means due to just the circumstances. But I understand that there are different levels of healing, and we're going through the journey, unlocking one door at a time to experience whatever portion of healing might be behind that next door. So that's kind of how I would describe what it means for me and my family.
Thank you so much. Very deep. Just makes me remember we are all spiritual beings having a very difficult human experience. And it's the human experience part, which is why we're here. So I imagine you have pulled from a well of spiritual significance, of support, of family, of knowing without evidence, of faith, and of trust. And I want to come to Brother Thomas to ask about how he is. Sorry, I saw you going. It's like right on top.
No problem. I wasn't running.
Yeah, that's like it would be me. Like right. How? What are some of the? Because when I think about healing, I think a lot about the power of the spirit. And I was hearing bloodline and ancestor information and what Mr. Collins was sharing. And so I'm thinking about him talking about how he came into existence and what he's had to usher and manage in his existence. And then thinking about how you're starting with people earlier in that experience. And what are some of the ways that spirit guides you, or their spiritual practices or ideas that are being implanted in the young people that are effective or effective for you and keeping you grounded in the work that you're doing?
Well, the one thing, so to start off with, kind of the spirit, as you mentioned, really informed me some years ago that, oftentimes you hear adults kind of blame the youth for how youth are behaving. And in my work with young people, I have realized that they bear the burden of all the decisions that we're making as adults. So they are really just a reflection of us as adults. So really the diagnosis needs to be pointed back at us individually. And so as I continue to do this work, I see with these young people, the capability and the capacity is already there. They just haven't had an opportunity to exercise it with people that they trust and that they want to partner with. And so I remember when I was 15, 16 years old, I would have never stepped in a room with police officers or the county school board or the superintendent or pediatricians because I would have just been too timid, too apprehensive, and not have enough confidence. So now these young people that I'm working with, they are stepping into these rooms with the innate, inherent capability and capacity already. And being in partnership with them and working with them has been something special to see. And so, to answer your question, I have seen this incredible ability to be resilient when that resilience isn't imposed, where they don't have to exercise imposed resilience on them, facing you know, these unfair situations, these unjust situations. So just seeing them being able to be incredibly resilient in any and every situation, whether it comes from planning a circle, co-facilitating a circle, interviewing the superintendent, apologizing to the superintendent because of their negative assumptions, all the stuff that they heard from the media about him, being placed. So these are the things that I have seen and witnessed firsthand that is really the true essence of the spirit and human beings being human beings, and really dropping that positionality, dropping those titles, and just being themselves and being vulnerable.
Thank you so much, Brother Thomas. And then we're coming to our good sister out in Selma, Miss Jackson. I can't help it. I feel like Outcast. So you just Miss Jackson today. Either it's Janet or it's going to be Outcast. Either way is culturally significant, as is the work that you're doing. And I think a lot about Selma from this aspect of healing and spirit and a lot of what we've been hearing, because one would think a place that had become an epicenter of a national trauma, right? Like a metaphor for a national trauma. Where and how has Selma, the people of Selma, found opportunities to be in that healing journey? What are some strategies and outcomes that the folks in the room should know about? Passing it to you, our sister.
So very quickly, I'll just say that so often people see Selma as a symbol and not a city with people with needs. And so I really appreciate that question. I also think it's significant to say that the civil rights movement wasn't just a social justice movement, it was a spiritual movement. And we often forget about that because all of the harm that religion has done, but we forget about all of the power that we use from it too, and that multiple things can be true at once. And I think that's really important for Selma in particular, because we can't get through this without the spiritual part. Right. We've tried to rebel against the spiritual pieces because of the harm, and we have to heal from that and acknowledge the harm. Right. Because you can't heal from it without the acknowledgement. But then we have to move forward, right? And Selma is moving forward. And one of the ways we do that, like my brother Thomas, is through restorative justice, through circles. It's literally in our most difficult school in terms of crime and violence and things, the circles have helped go down 40% referrals and expulsions. It's because our young people get it. They want it, right? They're like, I get this process that says, we're going to use what we have in common, like values, to make sure everybody has what they need. That includes the person who may have done the harm. Gets what they need, because the best way to stop that from ever happening again is to make sure that everybody's needs are met. The community is harmed. What does the community need? And so circles have really been vital for us in the healing process to make sure everybody has what they need so we can heal forward together.
Thank you so much. This is so rich. I'm going to come around through the group another time, just on this sort of healing concept. And I'm going to start with you, Sister Jackson, because earlier this year I had a great fortune to read and be in dialogue with David Greenberg, who is the biographer of the John Lewis biography, which I highly recommend to everyone in the room. In part because it really gives, I think, it's sort of like becoming John Lewis, like how did this person become who they were, who we understand them as. And there was a journey that really was also about place, that there was this way, for example, about Selma that I read it as a vortex of possibility. Now, in real time, that might not have been what everybody was thinking, but there's the story that we all know about Edmund Pettus Bridge. According to the biographer, what initially happens is they were going to go at a different time, and then it got shifted because there were folks who were injured who wanted to participate, and also because Dr. King was supposed to attend. One thing that most of us don't know, or I'll just say I was whatever years old until I read this particular part, was that there was this convergence where Dr. King was receiving information of credible death plots, assassination plots against him. And this is why he was unable to go to Selma when they started. When what we know happened, there had a precursor where people went ahead of Dr. King because they didn't want to wait any longer. And they were effectively going to walk from Selma to Montgomery. You have to cross the Edmund Pettus Bridge to get out of Selma to go on your way to Montgomery. So the bridge itself was not supposed to be a spectacle. It was just like the way that you leave. Dr. King was not a part of the original one because he was avoiding being killed. Now, he gives the public answer that his church in Atlanta was feeling some type of way about him never being there. So he had to make sure he was doing Sunday service. But in fact, it was that he was aware of all of these different assassination attempts. So when we do see him, it is him coming, even though there are credible, verifiable threats against his life at that point. And so I say all that to say that what does it mean to be doing this work after these years where people have literally done this work knowing that they might die, which could put you in a very deep headspace that is one of negative energy, of a negative vibration, and you are emanating purple royalty, crown chakra information. You are here doing this work even as John Lewis has ascended. What is the message you have from where you sit around our history, around healing, and the importance of the work you're doing today?
I'll say two things really quickly. One, when the Collins were speaking, particularly Mr. Collins was speaking about the legacy of hate in his family, something rose up in me. And I was not just sad, but I was angry. And in moments like that, I have a choice to make what to do with my anger. I'm Christian, so be angry, but sin not. And I often tell people I'm not naturally nonviolent. Like, it takes work and practice and intentionality because it's a choice and a commitment. But something rose up and I had to refocus myself. And I say that because similarly with this, and whether it's death threats, whether it's a continued attack on Selma, because we've changed the world, not just in 1965, but 1865 as well, with the last major battle of the Civil War, it is so easy to let the injustice dictate your actions versus acknowledging I have every right to be angry. I have a right to be scared, but I'm not going to let fear dictate my actions. I'm going to let love dictate my actions. And then we have to do that on a continual basis. And the other thing is we can't let media or whoever make it one person, right? Because that's how they sort of take out the movement, like take out Dr. King, right? And so it's all of us deciding every day, every moment, which is really hard, that we're going to choose love, right? And so then they can't take the movement because all of us are moving forward together.
Yeah, thank you. It reminds me of being in Fellowship Baptist Church in the south side of Chicago. Reverend Pastor Charles Jenkins used to say, joy is a choice, and I choose joy. So to your point about the choices, another piece of guru wisdom I once heard, and I'm going to do my homework later so I can properly assign it, is that anger is a poison you take for someone else's actions. And so your point is well taken in that anger is an important marker because we're clearly feeling something has happened. But then if we use it as a fuel source, that's where we might have the breakdown. Coming to Brother Thomas to hear your thoughts just on this kind of vibration of, What is thrusting you forward in this particular moment, when there are all of these different challenges, especially in a state like Florida? How do you keep your head on and focused in the direction you've always been going on despite all of the noise and distraction?
Just understanding that, self-sufficiency, self-knowledge, that's really the key. Understanding that, the federal government, they have a hand in certain things, but really the change and the effect comes from the hyper local work that's being done. And so here in Jacksonville, Florida, there is a conception, to quote Michael Scott from The Office, that, Florida is a colorful, lawless swamp. You know, even though it may be, kind of to the world and, to the United States, but here work is being done, community is here, families are being raised, and connections are being made here in Jacksonville. So those are the things that keep me going. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I can remember very specifically what I needed and wanted at her age that unfortunately I didn't receive. Not at the fault of anyone, just that was the experience. And now, I live my life through her eyes. I live my life through my wife's eyes, and I want to, give them everything that me and my mother deserved. So when I do that, I want to go out into the community and understand that everybody deserves that, right? There are other children that are in these homes and have parents and family members that are looking at them saying, I know what I need and what I want. And, for some reason, some variable, they're not unable to receive it. So I want to give them the opportunity to find it and to change that generational experience and put a stop to it and put a halt to it, the same way I'm trying to do with my family.
Thank you so much. I'm going to call forward Christina just to open up the chat. We'll take questions there. I'm going to come to the Collins family just to close out this portion of the conversation before the Q&A, just to hear, and what you all have endured and are enduring. I appreciate you, Ms. Dawn, on the ing of it all. What is bringing you all joy? Where are you finding your joy in either the work you're doing or just in your daily life?
I'll tell you what brings me joy is my family. I find peace. My roots are from Eastern North Carolina, so there are times that Rick and we leave all of this and we go there. And I have cousins by the dozens, and we congregate in my grandmother's home, and no one knows us as the Collins family. It's just Rick and Dawn, and come in and let's love on you. And so when I need to rejuvenate, that's where I go for my roots. And I appreciate my husband of 40 years to be able to partner with me in this journey as we go forward. And lastly, it's to have an aha moment from a student. To be having this conversation, and just 2 weeks ago, I had a student from the University of Maryland say, I had no idea that this happened on this campus. I want to partner with you. How can my voice be heard and how can I help? So those are some ways that it's working for us.
I love that. Rick and Dawn was totally giving me like Ashford and Simpson, Peaches and Herb. Y'all, you sure you're not like an 80s group, 70s group? Right. It's like, oh, the Tom Jones and Dawn, it's like, are you Dawn? I'm just playing. I want to pass it to Mr. Collins for your thoughts. What is bringing you joy in this moment?
I guess I would just add to that, a large part of it, again, is, as I stated before, is paying tribute to our son's memory. But I think, a lot of strength now that I am, what's the politically correct term? I'm advanced in years. Now I've become advanced in years that I can engage in activities that allows us, my wife and I, to be involved with young folks through the work we do in our foundation. And it helps re-energize and rejuvenate me, even in the face of some of the things that we experience along this journey. But I'll just share one story that was kind of comical, but a part of that feeling in touch with the young folks around us. We had an experience through our foundation where we partner with students, particularly ROTC cadets, because that's how our son, became an officer in the Army. And one occasion we were partnering with through a collaboration between ROTC cadets here in the Maryland area from HBCUs and cadets from the military academy at West Point. And during that visit, we were visiting the Holocaust Museum, and during one of the lunch breaks, we were all, gathering our little beverages and snacks for lunch. And I was talking to this one West Point cadet, young fellow, and he was asking me a few questions, and somehow the question got around to how old I was, and he was saying that, oh, I was like, oh, I'm pretty old. It's like, oh, you can't be that old. And he was like, I was like, well, at that time I was like, I'm about to turn 69. He was like, at first he was like, oh my goodness, you can't be that old. But then after I said that, his response to me was, oh my gosh, you're older than my grandparents. And I thought I was gonna die. So I was like, yeah, that just put me right back into perspective that you're getting advanced in years when kids come up to you and tell you that you're older than their grandparents. That destroyed any illusion that I might have had, that I was still a young person. So I just wanted to share that story of, that's a part of my healing journey.
Thank you so much. And also for the levity. We have a wonderful question inside the chat. Are you getting the proper support from white allies with regards to your mission and the whole purpose of the work you're doing? Because of course we know when we're talking about people of color, especially we talk about Black people, we're talking about a small percentage of the total population. So just to hear a little bit about what has support and allyship look like in each of your work. And folks can take that question in whatever order they choose, whoever wants to jump at that.
If I may jump in, I'm going to tell you another thing that my husband just mentioned. It was the first time also in the history that we were able to bring cadets from HBCUs together with West Point. Never happened before. So those are allyships. These are things that have never happened before. And yes, there are allyships. We go to a global summit each year called Eradicate Hate. And we are part of that. So those are avenues, and I can't wait to get down to Selma and experience that. Also coming down to Mississippi to actually go to the barn. These are things that I've read about, but it's time for me to make that trek to those locations.
I love that.
I would say that I don't know if I would say getting the proper support, but there is support, right? Particularly nationally. Locally, it takes a lot more work, which scares a lot of people, right? But you have to remember that there were more white people that we know of to be killed in the voting rights movement than Black people. So it sent a clear sign to white people to stay in their place. And people, if they don't know the history, they largely still do. And so it takes a lot of work and effort. And for a lot of people, that's not their calling to do that work and effort. And that is okay. But what I will say, there's a growing move for let white people do their own work. Well, this may sound horrible, but I don't trust that. I feel like they need to your point about our humanity, they need that to help them do the work. And so it's not for all Black people to do that. I don't think that's everyone's call, but for those of us that it is, I don't think that they can do it on their own. There's been even more entrenched in things than we have. And so we need each other. And the last thing I'll say is that I actually believe there's something beyond allyship that can make it easier. I believe in co-liberation. And our racial equity training, we talk about co-liberation because this system is bad for all of us. I may be going down the boat first, but the Titanic is still going down. right? So it's best that you help so it not go down. And so when there's co-liberation, it's not as hard because I understand as a white person, I'm doing this for myself, not just for you. So when the stuff hits the fan, I'm not out because I understand it's going to blow up if I don't.
Mm-hmm. The doors of the church are open. Okay, Sister Jackson. I just to add to what you're saying, I think the other thing is it's important at the very least to hold space for those who have been racialized as white to remember there was a time when that did not exist. And it is totally fine for you to return to that remembering. That is a false category that Dr. Christopher often talks about as a part of the hierarchy of humanity that is generated to divide, destroy, and conquer. And if we allow people the space and time to arrive back at the co-liberation, I often say co-humanity of it all, then we're now in a better footing where we can move together with a shared strategy. And I think that's one of the big keys that we have been missing. I want to close out by just, one, thanking everyone here for your time, for your testimony, for your work, for your presence. I'm often told that when you are in virtual space, it may be even more potent and powerful than being in physical space, because usually you have to focus and be present in the space. And so I just want to thank you all. Please and invite everyone in the room to show emoji love, comment love, and also ask any questions of our panelists in the chat as well, because once folks liberate their stories, other stories are liberated, and that in and of itself is a healing. Thank you all so very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are now approaching a time where we're going to be divided into our breakout groups. I believe that those will just pop up and happen in the group. That will begin at about 10 after, so in about a minute, 60 seconds. Then we have a short break, and then we return for our final panel on transformation.
Dr. Hunter, can you tell people what they need to do in the breakout group?
Oh, yes, please. Thank you, Dr. Christopher. Yes, in the breakout room, please identify one recommendation for promoting healing and overcoming divides within communities in America. So this is the prompt that will take us into these breakout sessions. What is one recommendation for promoting healing and overcoming division that will be helpful in our communities in America? Please take that with you into your breakout session.
Five more minutes.
Always.
We need 5 more minutes.
Yeah, we definitely need 5 more minutes.
Oh, goodness.
Let's see if it'll work.
No, we can't do that.
Okay.
But anyway,
Hey, Dr. Christopher, you knew I was going to try something.
but Patrick,
We got a break coming up, but you
what I was telling you at the end is that I represented these community organizations for free for 10 years.
Wow. See, we needed you. We needed you. We needed you. Oh, boy. Hey, I'm going to put my contact information in the chat. Please reach out so we can continue our conversation after this over with.
Peace, everybody. Welcome back. I'm asking for folks to place, if you have a recommendation, please place it in the chat. I will uplift the ones that come in the soonest. And of course, the remainder will be in the chat. Also, then we will go into our short break, and then we will come back together at 3:30 Eastern Time, 2:30 Central Time, 12:30 Pacific Time. All right, we are now officially, here we go. Thank you very much, Jasmine, for the suggestion that we promote curiosity around matters of neurodiversity. Promote curiosity. around matters of neurodiversity, and also around LGBTQIA plus inclusion as a strategy to overcome divisions and increase communityship. We are now at our break. We will begin our final and closing panel at 30 after the hour, so in about 6 minutes. Please enjoy your break.